Dad didn't know what kind of dog he adopted until he saw what he did with his baby. He thought he was just bringing home a shelter dog. His wife feared the risk, especially with their baby in the house. But one quiet evening, when the child reached for the boxer, the truth came out. What the father saw in that moment proved exactly what kind of dog he had adopted, and it changed everything. Before watching, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss another heart-gripping story like this one. When David pushed open the door of the county animal shelter, the smell of disinfectant and wet fur hit him immediately. Rows of metal kennels stretched down the hallway, each filled with restless eyes and desperate paws, scratching against the bars. His wife Sarah shifted the baby carrier higher on her hip, glancing down at their son Liam, who blinked curiously at the fluorescent lights. "I still don't think this is a good idea," Sarah whispered. Her tone carried the exhaustion of sleepless nights and the protectiveness of a first-time mother. David shot her a reassuring smile. "We talked about this. A dog will grow up with him. They'll be best friends. You had one when you were a kid." "I had a beagle," she countered. "Not whatever we're about to walk past." They paused at the first kennel. A shaggy terrier barked frantically, leaping against the bars. Liam, startled, fists flailing, his lip quivering toward a cry. Sarah soothed him with a gentle rock, narrowing her eyes at her husband. "See?" But David pressed on. He had always imagined his son growing up with a loyal companion, someone who would be part of the family. He passed rows of barking dogs, German shepherds, mixed mutts, small yapping chihuahua, until one kennel near the end made him stop. Inside, a boxer lay silently on the concrete floor. His coat was a deep brown, his face black and serious. Unlike the others, he didn't bark or whine. He simply watched, his chest rising and falling slowly. Sarah froze. "Absolutely not." David crouched to get closer. "Look at him. He's calm. Not a sound." "Calm," Sarah hissed. "He's huge. He's muscular. You want that near our baby?" David studied the dog's eyes. They weren't wild or frantic. They were steady, following Liam's movements in his carrier. The baby's legs kicked, his tiny shoe brushing against the kennel bars. The dog didn't flinch, just tilted his head. A shelter worker, a young woman in a faded blue polo, approached. "That's Diesel," she said, glancing into the kennel. "Came in 2 months ago. He's about 4 years old. Previous owner couldn't keep him after moving." Sarah tightened her grip on the baby. "Is he good with kids?" The worker hesitated just long enough for Sarah's stomach to knot. "He's never shown aggression here. He's quiet, housed. He'll need exercise, but honestly, he's been one of our easiest dogs," Sarah scoffed. "That's not the same as being safe around an infant." David stood, brushing his hands on his jeans. "We can ask to meet him in the play area. Just us." "No," Sarah said firmly. "David, think. He's the size of me on all fours. Liam isn't even crawling yet." "What if Sarah?" David interrupted gently. "We can't judge him just by size. If we only wanted small, harmless, we'd end up with a goldfish." The worker smiled faintly. "You want me to bring him out?" Sarah opened her mouth to protest again, but David's nod overrode her. Minutes later, they were in the shelter's meet and greet room, a small space with rubber flooring and a couple of chairs. Sarah stayed near the wall, bouncing Liam nervously. David stood in the center as the worker led Diesel inside on a leash. The dog patted in calmly, sniffing the corners of the room before glancing up at David. His tail gave one cautious wag. David crouched low. "Hey, boy." Diesel approached, sniffing his hand, then leaning slightly into the offered scratch. His body language was relaxed, his head lowering willingly. Sarah's eyes narrowed. "He's putting on an act." David chuckled. "He's a dog, Sarah, not an actor." Then Diesel's gaze shifted to Liam. The baby gurgled, reaching one tiny fist out. Sarah stiffened, stepping back, but Diesel didn't lunge, didn't growl. He only tilted his head again, sitting down heavily on his hunches, as though deciding distance was safest. The worker smiled. He's cautious, not pushy. That's rare. Sarah's throat tightened. Rare doesn't mean safe. But David saw something else. An animal that wasn't frantic, wasn't desperate to escape, just steady and observing. When the time was up, the worker clipped the leash again. So, should I get you the paperwork? Sarah spun toward David. Paperwork? Are you out of your mind? We're not adopting him. Not with Liam at home. David lifted Liam gently from her arms, cradling the baby against his chest. Liam's eyes were locked on the dog, his little mouth forming a curious O. For a brief moment, David imagined them years from now, running in the yard, sharing naps on the couch, his son's laughter mixing with the sound of paws on the floor. He turned to the worker. Get the forms. Sarah's mouth fell open. David. He didn't look at her. His jaw was set, his decision made. And that was how it began. With one signature, the dog no one knew much about and the baby who didn't yet know the danger or safety in his future were tied together under one roof. The adoption papers were signed and the drive home was quiet. Diesel lay in the back seat, his body pressed against the door, head resting on his paws. Sarah kept glancing nervously at the rear-view mirror, checking on Liam in his car seat, then shifting her eyes to the heavy shape of the dog beside him. Every mile that passed felt like a gamble. By the time they pulled into the driveway, Liam had dozed off, pacifier bobbing gently with each breath. David clipped Diesel's leash, guiding him carefully into the house. The dog didn't resist. He sniffed cautiously, his nails clicking against the hardwood floors. Sarah set the diaper bag down with a thud. This is temporary, she muttered. If I see one sign, just one, he's gone. David chose not to argue. He unclipped the leash and let Diesel explore. The boxer padded around the living room, pausing by the couch, then circling near the toy basket. His movements weren't frantic. He seemed deliberate, almost surveying the space. Liam stirred in Sarah's arms, blinking awake. When his eyes landed on the dog, his lips parted in a curious, "Oh," he wriggled until Sarah set him down on the blanket spread across the floor. Keep him back, she warned sharply. David crouched nearby, watching both. Diesel's ears flicked at Liam's small cooing sounds. Slowly, almost hesitantly, the dog lowered himself onto his belly at the edge of the blanket. His chest flattened against the floor, front paws stretched forward. His head rested between them, eyes locked on the infant, but body completely still. Liam babbled, reaching out one tiny hand. Sarah's breath hitched. David. But Diesel didn't move. He only blinked, the muscles in his face softening. When Liam's hand finally brushed his fur, Diesel let out a long, slow exhale, as if surrendering to the contact. Liam giggled, slapping his palm against the short brown coat. Diesel stayed frozen except for the faint wag of his tail against the floor. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. Tears stung her eyes, but her fear held her back. He's letting him, she whispered. David's voice was quiet, steady. He's not letting him. He's protecting him. The baby leaned further, pressing his cheek against the dog's side. Diesel adjusted carefully, rolling just enough to create a space for the child against his ribs. It was not dominance. It was accommodation. Sarah sank onto the couch, unable to tear her eyes away. She had expected barking, snapping, some unpredictable flash of strength. Instead, she saw patience, an animal bigger than her son, making himself smaller, softer, to keep from frightening him. Liam let out another giggle, tugging clumsily at Diesel's ear. Diesel responded by nudging his head closer, tolerating every clumsy pull. His dark eyes flicked briefly towards Sarah and David, as if silently saying, I know what I'm doing. Trust me. The house fell into a silence Sarah hadn't known in months. No crying, no restless pacing, just the rhythmic sound of Liam's laughter and the quiet breathing of a dog who had chosen without being asked to guard. An hour later, Sarah knelt on the floor beside them. Liam had grown tired, slumping sideways, his small body curled into Diesel's flank. The pacifier had slipped from his mouth, his lips parted in sleep. Diesel didn't stir. He stayed perfectly still, chest rising and falling under the weight of the baby pressed against him. Sarah reached out, brushing her fingers through her son's soft hair. Her voice cracked. David, he's safe here, isn't he? David's hand rested on her shoulder. I think he always was. We just didn't know it yet. For the first time since stepping into the shelter, Sarah felt her guard ease. The fear hadn't vanished, but it had shifted into something new. Respect. Diesel wasn't just a dog anymore. He was a guardian, a presence she hadn't realized their family needed until now. That night, when she tucked Liam into his crib, Diesel lay at the nursery door, refusing to leave. His head rested on his paws, his gaze fixed on the sleeping baby. Every so often, his ears twitched at a sound outside, his body tense, but he never moved from his post. Sarah lingered at the doorway, whispering to herself, I didn't know what kind of dog you were. Now I do. She closed the door gently, leaving her son under the silent watch of the protector she had once feared.